Seconds before I go live. First place, Division B, last night in Scrabble tournament.
Okay. We won't ask what division that was. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're in the voting session of Education, Health, and Environment. We're looking at voting list 13 and 14. Thank you all, committee members. Let's go to 14. I believe these are all bills that were withdrawn. Is that correct, Council? Okay. So these are unfavorable or just withdrawn? They're just withdrawn. Or the motion is an unfavorable withdrawn. Okay. The motion with withdrawn next to it. Is there a second? Somebody? Second? I hope we don't have any discussion on withdrawn bills. Will anybody object to the vote to give an unfavorable to all of these withdrawn bills? Seeing none, that takes care of voting list 14. Okay. God, that's shortened our work. We're going to take the bills that we held the other day. Let's go to Senate Bill 427. That's the Elfrith bill. I have spoken with the chair of Budget and Tax. They are fine believing that the state should pay. They just asked for, in terms of the phase-in, it'd be pushed back. How much, Stacy?
1 year.
1 year.
Fiscal 2023.
So if there's no objection, we will formally adopt the amendment if we haven't already, and also the amendment to push it back 1 year in terms of the state repayment. That doesn't mean they can't go ahead and do this. Is that correct, Stacy? It's just that the state won't repay, or they're not required to put them in?
What it means is that there's a mandatory appropriation for fiscal year 2023 to pay for that, and we can structure that amendment to say that the state will reimburse them for the costs of installation and dispensers for a local who is complying with the requirements of this section. So yes.
So the requirement starts earlier.
So no, the requirement is that by October 1, 2022, that they have to install and do
Right.
that. That's
And
the requirement.
the reimbursement will be a year later.
Correct.
Okay. Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the update. I just wanted to bring myself back up to speed. Had we already adopted your amendments, and now we're adopting, and we adopted the Simon Air Carrozza amendment, and now we're on passage of the full bill. And can you just give us one more
We
rundown?
adopted the early Pinsky amendment about not requiring a dispenser in every elementary school bathroom. And that too, and not removing the requirement they be in the men's bathrooms or boys' bathroom. Right now, we're doing the Simon Air Carrozza amendment as amended with the year delay on the state reimbursement cost.
Okay.
And I don't think I see any objection to adopting that amendment, so that amendment's adopted. So it's the bill as amended with both sets of amendments.
Okay, thank you.
Discussion? Will anybody be voting against the legislation as amended? Seeing none, it will be recorded as 10-0, 1 absent. Okay, hold on. That was 427. Okay, let's go to another Elfrith bill, 283. There was discussion of clarifying the heir's responsibility in terms of coordinating voting between the campus and the local board of election. Ms. Goodman, you want to, and then I'll pass it on to the Vice Chair.
Call Senate Bill 283, Student and Military Voter Empowerment Act, and essentially the bill establishes various requirements regarding military and overseas voters and students at higher institutions of higher education in the state. Yesterday, this committee adopted Senator Pinsky's amendment that removed a provision requiring a specified student voting plan to have a policy allowing a student an excused absence from class or a job with the institution for voting. There is an additional amendment from Senator Kagan. It's in a separate packet from your voting packet. It has STAG at the top, SB 0283/774432/1. And essentially, this is a clarifying amendment. And what it does is clarifies that factors relating to the conduct of an election, that an institution should make reasonable accommodation in collaboration with a local board about in their student voting plan.
Vice Chair, you want to add to that or make a comment?
I want to thank our counsel, Stacey Goodman, for turning this around really fast. And it is a list of random things that make elections viable, including parking, campaign signs, voter access to campus without voter identification, the space, including ADA accessibility, ballot possibility of ballot drop-off boxes, and anything else. So with that, I would move this amendment.
Second discussion on the amendment. Senator Carrozza.
I just want to understand how the process works as far as we've got the coordinator, we got the plan, now we've got a list of items to be included. How is this going to work? And I also wanted to make the comment, there was some other discussion we had on this bill about the possibility of having, two coordinators, so we would have fairness in this. So, and I noticed that obviously Senator Simon Ayer had to leave us at this point, so I didn't know if we could hold that part for discussion. But so two parts of my question. I have a question about this amendment and how this would work, and two, I thought we would put this bill on hold until we could have the additional discussion about the fairness with a student coordinator and the plan.
Well, let's explain it, and if you'd like to wait, we'll do it later in the voting session, same voting session. Look, there are two parts to the bill, well, maybe more. The local board can consult with the institutions about any consideration of having a voting location, but it's still up to the local board. That's very clear here. If after consultation they all agree it's a good idea, in coordination, and now with this amendment, there are considerations they look at. If the local board agrees there should be a voting place there, the coordinator should develop, along with the local board, a plan including these things. Now, the coordinator issue is, when the bill first came in, I think 2 years ago, it said they should hire a coordinator. That was changed to designate a coordinator to save money. And it's my belief or understanding that someone in the student rights department or the vice president who handles student rights and responsibilities, someone in that office will be assigned to be the coordinator.
Administrative person as the coordinator who would be working with the local board of elections as opposed to a student coordinator. Is that, because my understanding is you have the local board of elections working on, the type of decisions that have to be made would have to be at supervisory level and not a student coordinator.
Staff member at the institution that would be the student vote, that would be the voting coordinator. Even though it says student voting coordinator, I think what they mean by that is just the person who helps students learn about the voting process through the various mechanisms that are in the bill.
The word student is not the person designated. It's to coordinate the efforts to increase student awareness, education, and welcoming them to vote. It's a staff member.
So we would still have the same issue of fairness, given the nature of elections.
Well, fairness, I mean, it's a staff member.
No, the fairness of whether you perhaps would have more than one of each party, so there's fairness in the work of that coordinator in working with the local board of elections.
Right, but it's a staff member.
I understand that now.
Having to ask them what party they belong to, I'm just not sure as an employer you can do that, or how they vote. Yeah, I think I had Senator Riley and then Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question will affect this. It clarified something in this bill, as several others that are coming to us. Ballot drop boxes, it is my impression that they're put out by the county board of elections. And is it accurate to say that only county ballots should go into that box, or is that box open to everybody in the state?
So the reason that was included in the list is because generally a early voting center or a polling place would have a drop box at the early voting center or at the polling place. So the only part that would play is that where would this go so that it was accessible to the public, because obviously just not the people on the campus would be voting at that polling place or the polling center. So it was more of a consultation to determine where the appropriate site is. But again, the local board has the final say. This is their responsibility, but if you're going to be putting this on a campus, then they would want to give some input onto what's an appropriate location.
Thank you for that, Ms. Goodman, but that's not my question. We put the voting box at the University of Maryland College Park,
right,
and the students from Washington College, Washington County, Talbot County, Baltimore County dropped their ballots in.
Correct.
What happens to those ballots?
So the local board would collect whatever election-related materials are in the box, and it doesn't just have to be ballots, and they would send it to the appropriate local board.
So we could use a ballot drop box anywhere in the state with confidence that the ballot will get to the appropriate county board of elections.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, I think you can do that.
Chairman, this is sort of most of our colleges, universities are nonprofit. They get federal funds. They get all kinds of things. If they were to engage in partisan activity, they could lose their funding. It is not something that they would do. So additionally, it is typically there's an Office of Community Engagement, and so it would be a staff member who's that. So it's not like you need the ways in which we need a Democratic Party and a Republican election judge. If there was a polling place at that location, it would have those two people. But again, very clearly, they cannot engage in partisan activity and represent the university. That is just not something that they can do.
Senator Carrozza. Okay. I mean, I'm more than willing to hold it till later, till he comes back, but I think the conversation has been very clear. It's a staff member, and as Senator Washington said, it is to explain voting and put that you can vote and should vote, and here are the dates. It is not to say what party to vote for. That's not the purview of the bill or the student affairs staff. But we will take this up this morning, but I can hold. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is it okay to speak on the bill as a whole? Or just the amendments of the Vice Chair?
I don't want to do this twice, I guess.
The reason I'm asking, I had a conceptual amendment I'd like to offer, and I wondered if you'd like me to start discussing it now or to wait until we take the bill up later in the voting session. I was just thinking it might help the committee staff have it out there early.
Why don't you briefly describe it, and we'll hold off debate until we take it back up.
Okay, so basically this is a pretty big amendment, I guess. It would strike the entire student portion of the bill. It's easy to, if you're a college-age student, it's easy to Google how to register to vote and do these different things. There's already various get-out-the-vote groups, political clubs, already on campuses. For instance, organizations like Campus Vote Project have already been working to normalize and institutionalize student voting by working directly with colleges and universities
Senator,
across the country.
I think you explained what you want to do conceptually. I don't think you have to give the justification quite yet. Let's hold that till.
Okay, that way the whole group can hear it at once. That sounds like a good idea. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
We will come back to that bill before we conclude voting. We'll make sure by 11:30 to take that up, so we're done by 11:45. Okay. That's done. Senate Bill 418. I don't know. Please.
Senate Bill 418 replaces existing efficiency standard requirements for various products with energy and water efficiency standard authorizations and requirements for a new list of products, authorizing the Maryland Energy Administration, or MEA, to adopt standards for certain products and requiring specified standards to be adopted for other products. The bill also creates a contingency for any future repeal or other voiding of a federal product efficiency standard. To recap the amendments, there's an amendment. It's on page 38A of your packet. The numbering got a little wonky. But amendment number 1, this is from Senator Pinsky, but by request of the Maryland Energy Administration. Amendment number 1 makes clarifying changes to the definition of shower head. Amendment number 2 alters the definition of water closet to include dual flush toilets and establishes water efficiency standards for dual flush toilets. Amendment number 3 clarifies that the bill only applies to the installation of appliances if the installation is done for profit. Amendment number 4 adds efficiency standards for portable electric spas and removes noise level requirements for ventilating fans. And Amendment number 5 strikes language aimed at mitigating federal rollbacks on efficiency standards. There's another amendment in your packet on page 39 being offered by Senator Hester. This amendment would strike provisions of the bill applying efficiency standards to air purifiers.
Okay. Do we know what the posture was when we left it on Friday or whenever? Wednesday? Had we moved the bill? Lamorier or April?
We had not adopted any amendments. I don't know if we moved
Okay,
moved the bill
let's
yet.
assume the bill is in front of us. Well, hold it. The Pinsky amendments, which are really the MEA amendments, any objection to adopting them? Seeing none, the Pinsky amendments are adopted. We have an amendment from Senator Hester.
Mr. Chair, I do not want to offer the amendment.
Okay, then the bill is amended as before us. Anybody be voting against it? If not, it'll be recorded as 10-9-0, and it won't affect the vote. I know the minority leader is on a meeting with the presiding officer, and Senator Lim will be back. As long as it doesn't affect the vote and they're in the complex, they can add their votes. As of now, it's a 9-0 unanimous vote. That will be reported to the floor. Okay. We'll come back to SB 10. Let's start with SB 66.
All right, so Senate Bill 66, sponsored by several senators, Senators Alfred Beidel, Eckhart, Griffith, Gazone, Hester, Kelly, Patterson, Rosa Pett, Wesson, Zucker. This is the Department of Housing and Community Development, Office of Digital Inclusion, established, also known as the Digital Connectivity Act of 2021.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we want people at home to be able to hear it. Really pull your microphone closer and really speak into it. As long as it's being streamed, we ought to have it at as high a quality as possible.
So Senate Bill 66, is the Department of Housing and Community Development Office of Digital Inclusion established. This is sponsored by at least 7 senators. This replaces the Office of Rural Broadband, which was originally a part of the Department of Information Technology, with the Office of Digital Inclusion, and it expands the responsibilities of said office. The Office of Digital Inclusion, which will be newly formed, is tasked with preparing a statewide plan ensuring that every member of the state has reliable broadband internet access by no later than December 31st, 2029. ODI, Office of Digital Inclusion, will shift the responsibilities to a focus on broadband internet. Additional responsibilities of the office include developing standards for broadband, implementing audits on performance, collaborating with local education agencies, assisting community development organizations, and offering funding to assist local governments in establishing broadband connections. The director of the office will be appointed by the governor, but there is a slight caveat. The first director of this newly formed office will be the current director of the Office of Rural Broadband. The director is required to work with the Secretary of Commerce and the state superintendent, and there are several mandated collaborations that the office is required to perform. The bill requires the office to report to the governor yearly. It leaves untouched those appointed or elected members of government and those employed within the current Office of Rural Broadband. It requires that the governor must include a budget item to cover 2 employees in the office, but the fiscal note is clear that it's a little too late for mandated appropriations for next fiscal year. There are 4 sponsor amendments that are pretty comprehensive, and they begin on page 4 or 5 of your voting packet. Page 4 of your voting packet, and these are presented as they were in the House, so the amendment and the reprint will be completely identical. So first, the amendments will make this bill an emergency bill. It'll be in effect when it's enacted. It establishes the Digital Inclusion Fund, the Digital Connectivity Fund, and restores the Rural Broadband Assistance Fund that was originally repealed. So to kind of go through the 3 funds, which have similar purposes, but there are slight nuances. Digital Inclusion creates grants to nonprofits and local governments to increase capacity building. Grants cannot exceed $500,000. Digital Connectivity Fund, the purpose is to help with establishing affordable broadband. The Rural Broadband Assistance Fund is administered by the Department of Commerce, establishes broadband services in rural and underserved areas of the state. The amendment would also alter responsibilities of the Office of Digital Inclusion broadly, specifies that definitions and standards should not be in conflict with Federal Communications Commission standards at the federal level. Alters the public map requirement, replaces it with a requirement for a website including a publicly accessible map that's based on data from the Federal Communications Commission, so FCC. Specifies what must be included in a database evaluation that's going to be a part of the statewide plan. Adds data on investments to the data collecting requirement that's also part of the statewide plan. The office will be responsible for identifying funding needed and funding that has already been received. Modifies local education collaboration requirements. Changes to the statewide plan more generally. Instead of the broad universal requirement that access to broadband should be made established by December 31st, 2029. There's a milestone there. So by December 31st, 2025, 98% connectivity to affordable broadband should be ensured. And that previously established 2029 date was moved to December 31st, 2026. So that is the date by which 100% connectivity should be restored. Input from stakeholders, local libraries, et cetera, is included. Mandatory collaborations. And there are several changes to the reporting requirement. I've already mentioned that the Rural Broadband Fund was restored. And in terms of reporting requirements, reporting must touch on connectivity gaps, infrastructure and adoption needs. And in terms of input, specific input must come from local governments. And there must be a written statement required in preparing the statewide plan. So that's a lot, but that covers the gamut.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, particularly committee members on this side of the room, amendments happen multiple ways. Sometimes one body will develop and spend a lot of time working with the stakeholders in the amendments and then have both chambers adopted on both bills. So you don't have to duplicate effort. Sometimes the chambers work totally independently and the other side will amend our bill, we'll amend their bill, and it might end up in conference. So what you see here are amendments that the House worked on because they took the lead in bringing stakeholders together, and they are sending them over to us before we move on the bill so we don't duplicate efforts. There are other times there are philosophical disagreements. We'll pass a bill in one form, they'll pass it in another, and if we believe in ours, we're going to amend theirs to look like ours, and they'll amend ours to look like theirs, and then ultimately we'll go to conference committee. So there's a front-end discussion and attempted consensus, and then there's a back end. So what you see in front of you is where they tried to work it out ahead of time so both bills would be consistent. So anyway, that's just a little history lesson. Senator Simon-Ayer.
Thank you. Just a little more background on that. We actually put a work group together, and we worked with Delegate Learman and Senator Elfreth. So we were all working together. They just went first. So these are collaborative amendments.
Senator Carozza, Senator Gallion, Senator Riley, in that order that I saw you. I could be off, but.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the background explanation and also the additional information from Senator Simon-Ayer. And this issue is extremely important, and all of us are involved in it, especially those of us who represent rural areas where the issue of broadband access has been an issue years before COVID-19 hit. You know, if there's any silver lining here, the fact that I think we can make bipartisan progress on broadband access across the board for all constituencies. And as we know, it affects education, telehealth, telework, and our economic development in this state for the future. With all that said, I've been particularly concerned to make sure that our rural areas continue to receive its fair share. And I understand we were going through the amendments pretty quickly. I wasn't part of this work group, but I'm trying to catch myself up, and maybe someone, if Senator Simon-Ayer was part of that work group or others, but wanted to make sure that those rural concerns had been addressed in the amendments.
Thank you. Senator Gallion.
That was kind of the same. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In those amendments, it looks like the Rural Maryland Council just had two. Are they included? I'm trying to make sense of the amendments we just heard from that came over. Would those two, the one saying requesting to strike the mapping responsibility as the FCC intends to update its mapping capabilities, do you know if that's in that group?
Okay, so rural Maryland was concerned with restoring the Rural Broadband Assistance Fund, so that is incorporated. The minor amendments to update the statewide plan for it to be due by July 1st, 2023, that's not reflected in the amendment. The current date is 2026, and the mapping requirement hasn't been integrated. So there will still be, there isn't a mapping requirement. It'll be reflected in a public website. So essentially, these concerns have been addressed, but I'm not sure if that was intended within the amendment. It seems like the amendment specifically was focused on their primary concern, which is restoring that Rural Broadband Assistance Fund. And I think the mapping requirement is removed to replace it with a website, but it doesn't have anything to do with the FCC requirement. So it seems like it was just coincidental.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Senator Riley, followed by Senator Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 5 of our packet, halfway down, there's a term I'm not familiar with. It says GIS heat mapping comments. Could somebody tell me what a heat mapping is?
So I'm not formally familiar with heat mapping, but GIS data has to do.
I know what that is.
Okay, right, yeah, I'm not completely sure with heat mapping.
All right, I'll research it offline. Thank you.
Okay.
Senator Washington?
Thank you. I actually know about this. So it's really just kind of a way of doing hotspots. And so you could either do it based on temperature or it's based on, density of population. It's just kind of a way of like showing these intense areas. So it's a way of analyzing it visually, the data. So if you have more of something, it's going to be brighter and it's going to look like hot, fire. And if there's less of something, it'll be cool. So this is gradually from red to sort of to yellow to orange. I'm sorry, from red to orange, and then out that way.
Thank you.
Yep.
You're confusing me, Senator. You want me to have her go first? Senator Frey-Hester, followed by Vice Chair, followed by Senator Carrozza.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. I just, to help to answer the question that the good senator answered, the reason it's relevant here is particularly for the last mile connection, to make sure that when you're doing the GIS mapping, you're actually getting it to the house as opposed to like the block. I don't know if that makes any sense or not.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apparently also heat mapping is what they do at the front desk when you're trying to get into the building. So we have all been heat mapped almost every day that we've come into this building. I have several questions, and I don't know whether council can help or whether this might need amendment or whether, if we can try. So page 21, lines 20 and 21, this is on the interlineated version. Support efforts to increase the digital literacy of residents and business owners. Is there any reason that we don't have nonprofits in there? Or clients of nonprofits? Clients of nonprofits would be under residents, but business owners, could we? What line? Lines 20 and 21, I'm just wondering, I'm fine with business owners in there. I just wonder whether we should add nonprofits.
That amendment wouldn't conflict with anything that's in here. So if you would like that drafted, I can.
I think I would, assuming that there's no problem with the sponsor. I have a few more questions, Mr.
Anybody object to that? Adopted. Next.
Okay. I'm wondering on page 22, after line 9, the inserted number 2, Roman 2, do you know who non-governmental actors are? Consult with local governments, federal regulators, internet service providers, and non-governmental actors involved in and working in the field of connecting communities to high-speed internet and digital literacy.
Yeah, let's change actors to organizations, make it NGOs.
But it might be businesses. It might be a lot of. It could be an installer. I don't have any idea.
NGOs. I mean, I don't know what an actor is. I know what an actor is. I see them on screen.
Actors.
I don't think that's a great term.
I don't
agree.
either.
I mean, organizations is generic enough to be.
Fine.
It can be businesses. It can be anything.
Yep.
Okay.
Is that okay? So I'll move that. Change actors to organizations.
Seeing none.
Wondering also on page 22, the list that is in the paragraph lines 10 through 16. Carrying out the provisions, the office shall meet quarterly to collaborate with appropriate units of state government, including the Department of Information Technology, absolutely, State Department of Education, absolutely, Department of Transportation, Maryland State Library, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, Department of Planning, and the appropriate units of local government to ensure that efforts to expand and enhance broadband internet services. I would love to include, to clarify, appropriate units. I think the advocacy organizations, whether that's MACO and MML, but they ought to be in the room at the table in my opinion.
Anybody have any objection? Adopted. I'm sorry. Yes.
That in addition to or instead of?
I'm okay either way. I would be inclined to say in addition.
It has to be in addition.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Adopted.
Okay, and then I had just a couple more things, Mr. Chairman. So could council explain, and this was, maybe I just got lost in the process. I'm on page 24 of the reprint, number 2, a third of the way down. Money in the fund may not be used for increasing broadband internet infrastructure. So I thought that was the goal of this, but did I lose? Because it's grants above that. They're grants up to $500,000 to local governments and nonprofits that are working to further the goals. But then it says it can't be used to basically do what we want it to do, which is increase broadband internet infrastructure. What did I miss? I'm on page 24 of the reprint. If you look at the third line down, G1, it says the fund may be used only to distribute grants not to exceed $500,000 to local governments and nonprofit corporations that are working to further the goals of the office, including, and then it goes down, Romans 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it has 2. And under 2, it says money in the fund may not be used for increasing broadband internet infrastructure, which just seems confusing to me.
I think we have an answer from Senator
Simon
from
here?
Anne Arundel County.
Great.
I'm not the expert, but I think this is the Digital Inclusion Fund, and they have another one, the Digital Connectivity Fund, which would be used for that purpose.
Okay.
The Digital Inclusion Fund is mainly relating to grants and nonprofits with the purpose of digital literacy, et cetera, broadband access. So not necessarily infrastructure for that particular fund.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then on page 25, H2, kind of two-thirds of the way down. Any interest earnings of the fund shall be credited to the general fund of the state. Is there any reason that we shouldn't have it just go back to this fund? So we get a little bit more for the 7 years or so that it's going to be in operation? I thought normally it just goes back to the particular fund, not to the general
Well,
fund.
let's learn some context from Senator Simon Ayer.
I believe this is just boilerplate language that they always use, and I guess it's a policy decision if we want to change what they standardly do.
This is a fund that's going to go away after 7 or 8 years. Seems to me that if there's interest and stuff, it ought to go into that fund, because we're going to need every dime to make sure that everyone is connected. I think it's small, but I have seen boilerplate language like this, but I've also seen language that says any interest earnings go into the fund that we're talking about, and not to the general fund. So I think we ought to have it go to this fund and not the general fund. That would be my suggestion.
Senator Simon?
Say on page 24, H2, you have the same language for the previous fund.
So, yep. H2. I agree. I think in both places, I'd like to suggest that it go to that fund so we amplify whatever the governor is being mandated to put in there. So I would like to make that motion.
Just
In three funds.
One other question I would have is, might it encourage some to not make the upfront investment to get the interest and put it at the back end and use the fund to accrue and postpone the actual expenditures? Essentially, could it encourage bad behavior in terms of moving this process forward as rapidly as possible?
I'm not the good analogy because my interest on a savings account might be 12 cents or 34 cents or something, but we're talking about real money here, but I don't think it's going to be so much that it would change behavior. It just gives a few more dollars to make sure that we've got access, because if only once a year money is being put into the fund, and there's going to be the demand in all 24 jurisdictions, it'd be kind of nice to have a little bit extra coming in from interest. I don't think it's the hugest thing, but that would be my motion, to have it go back into these three funds.
I would second the amendment.
Discussion? Anybody object? Okay, adopted. I'm sorry, Ellis, you want to just debate it?
No, not on that. Wait, that's over.
Okay,
She,
hold 1 second.
okay, thanks.
Do we need, are you done?
I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator Ellis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question on page 24, G1, where it talks about the fund may be used only to distribute grants not to exceed $500,000 to local governments and nonprofit corporations. Okay, so what's the rationale for leaving out, say, small businesses or, for-profit in this service that the bill will authorize?
I'm reviewing the other funds now to see if there is a specific focus on small businesses and private entities. And in my conversations with the folks on the House side, there didn't seem to be a focus on that. And I'm also trying to see if the amendments that Senator Kagan proposed would cover that, but I think Senator Kagan said nonprofits.
Yeah, Senator, I'd like to hold until Senator Simon Ayer, who worked on the work group, can answer that question for
Okay,
us.
yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hester?
I spoke with the bill sponsor this morning, and she said that these funds are structured to be able to bring down specific pots of federal money. And so I think that's why there's three, and they're separate, and they have different postures, because they're anticipating money from the new administration coming in.
Put this on hold. We'll come back to it. I hate to do that, but I think sometimes we want to get as much information as possible. Anyway, I won't try to answer it. Let's go to the next bill.
Mr. Chair, before we put it on hold, if the council's going to be seeking additional information.
No, I'm sorry. I'm putting it on short-term hold. I'd like to have the Senator Simon Ayer. He might be able to resolve this issue. I'm not saying a hold till the next voting session.
Okay.
We're going to bring it
'Cause
back.
I had just additional information that needed to be run down, that's all.
Well, let's see how we do on this. Next bill.
That's me. Senate Bill 77, Energy Efficiency, Net Zero Homes Contract Preferences. This is sponsored by Senator Griffith. This bill focuses on the energy efficient homes construction loan program within the Department of Housing and Community Development. The bill would require the Department of Housing and Community Development, when providing assistance under the loan program already established, and specifically for the construction of net zero homes, to give preference to applications that will use the services of women, minority-owned, small, and veteran-owned businesses in the clean energy industry, and more specifically, though, that will use services of businesses that provide employment for individuals, that would train through workforce development programs that are supported by the Strategic Energy Investment Fund and the Clean Energy Workforce Account. Last year's version of the bill did pass in the House. The Maryland Energy Administration, also a requirement in the bill, must also use strategic energy investment funds to invest in pre-apprenticeship, youth apprenticeship, and registered apprenticeship programs to establish career paths in the clean energy industry under the Maryland Employment Advancement Right Now, the EARN program. There was no opposition and there are no amendments.
Did this come from the Griffith Work Group?
I think in part it did.
I'm sorry?
Justin, I think in part it did.
Okay. Is there a motion on the bill?
So moved.
It's been moved, it's been seconded. Discussion on the bill. Seeing none, will anybody be voting against this legislation? Seeing none, it will be marked as 9-0. And if the other two, because it won't affect the outcome, they can add their votes to that. Next bill.
Senate Bill 93, Business Occupations and Professions, Architects, Scope of Licensure. This is also sponsored by Senator Griffith. This bill would increase the dollar amount threshold for an individual to hire an architect for changes to their home. For minor alterations and fixtures, the amount of architectural work cannot exceed $25,000, and it must comply with the Maryland Rehabilitation Code to avoid hiring an architect. For storefronts, stairways, joists, and plumbing, an individual need not hire an architect for any projects so long as costs do not exceed $10,000. Building permits that are allocated or distributed are not allowed to cause the alteration to exceed these amounts pre-established. There was no opposition and there are no amendments to this bill.
Move favorable?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Senator, no discussion. Will anybody be objecting to this legislation? Seeing not, it will be recorded as 10-0-1 absence. SB 93. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 2-minute break. I have to get on the rules for just 1 minute, so don't go anywhere.
Did you get your test result yet this morning? No. I just got a voicemail saying if we didn't get it, we need to call somebody.
Somebody called me to ask me did I get it.
Right, but there's a follow-up number. There's a follow-up number. I'll write it down for you.
Anyone who's getting a vaccine this afternoon, the second one, they are saying that Gatorade type things to make sure that your electrolytes are high, doing that in advance, lots of liquids. So if you've noticed, that's supposed to really mitigate some of the after effects, if that's helpful.
Thank you, because I am. Mm-hmm.
2696? Mary, hold on.
I believe half of it. Thank you for your indulgence. That's 93 we've done. Let's go to 442.
Senate Bill 442, Aquaculture Leases and Shellfish Nursery Operations, Wetlands, by Senator Klausmeier. This bill establishes that an aquaculture leaseholder is not required to obtain a tidal wetlands license or permit from the Board of Public Works or the Maryland Department of the Environment for activity and the use of equipment associated with the lease. There is an amendment on page 41 of your packet. This is amendment number 823-528/1 from Senator Klausmeier. The amendment strikes the language of the bill and substitutes language requiring the Aquaculture Coordinating Council, in consultation with the Maryland Department of the Environment, to review the policies of the Department of the Environment regarding the application of tidal wetlands permit requirements to aquaculture operations in the state, and on or before December 1st, 2021, to report to the Governor and the General Assembly its findings and recommendations, including any proposed legislation on changes necessary to eliminate conflicts or redundancies in the oversight of aquaculture operations by the Department of the Environment and the Department of Natural Resources.
There was no opposition at the hearing. Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved, it's been seconded. Discussion on 442. No amendments. I'm sorry.
There's an amendment.
Okay. Any objection to the amendment? Is that a sponsor amendment?
Makes an emergency bill and.
Yes.
April, I'm sorry. Ms. Morton? On page 41, it seems that 4142, it appears that there's an amendment, makes an emergency bill. Can you just explain what else it does, please? Did I miss your doing that?
So these are the amendments that essentially they strike the language of the bill and instead require the Aquaculture Coordinating Council to study the issue with the Department of the Environment and then to make recommendations regarding reducing redundancies and conflicts in the oversight by the Department of the Environment and the Department of Natural Resources.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I missed that. I'll move the amendment, Mr. Chairman, if you want.
Any objection to the amendment that basically replaces much of the bill? Seeing no objection, the bill as amended. Does anybody want to oppose? Senator Gallion.
So, it's a bill that's been amended heavily. MDE had a favorable with amendments, so I was wondering, was that the part of the bill sponsors change amendments?
I believe so. So essentially, the Department of the Environment's concern with the original bill was that it created this broad exemption. That's out. So now the bill is just to require them to work with the department to figure out sort of how to work out this conflict.
Further discussion, seeing none. Will anybody? Yes, Senator.
Just going back, trying to play catch up, because this is a really important issue in my district, and I'm trying to follow these amendments. So can you bottom line now with the amendments what this bill does?
With the amendments, all the bill does is it requires the Aquaculture Coordinating Council to study and make recommendations on this issue and to work with the Department of the Environment to come to a solution.
When there are conflicts between...
Right, so the issue that the bill was originally trying to address is this question of what sort of permits do you need, specifically for tumblers, but for other dock-based infrastructure that's part of an aquaculture operation. They're already sort of regulated under the terms of their lease with the Department of Natural Resources, but there's been some questions and some inconsistencies about how the Maryland Department of the Environment is requiring permits for that same kind of equipment under their wetland permitting authority. So I think it sounds like the Department of the Environment is willing to work on this. It sounds like they need to kind of sit down and figure out what equipment is being used and what should be exempted from this sort of separate MDE permitting requirements.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Again, the bill's amended is before you. I see no red lights. I hear no objection. This will be recorded as a 10-0. And Senator Ellis can join us later on that bill. Thank you. Yes.
I had to step out real quickly for the Rules Committee. Is there any way, I was on the work group for that broadband, can I be sponsored?
We actually held it because there was a question.
Okay.
So we're coming back to, I wouldn't, and it was actually by Senator Ellis. We're going to get to that before we leave today. Okay, next bill.
Sorry. Senate Bill 448. Let's see here. County Board of Education, Student Transportation Vehicles, sponsored by Senator Edwards. This bill authorizes the County Board of Education to provide transportation for specified public school students to and from school using a vehicle other than a Type 1 or Type 2 school vehicle, which are essentially yellow school buses, when a school vehicle cannot reasonably be provided. The Maryland State Department of Education must consult with county boards of education and the Motor Vehicle Administration to adopt regulations establishing minimum vehicle and driver safety standards for alternate student transportation under this bill. The bill also broadens the definition of non-public school with respect to the transportation of students to mean any elementary or secondary school in the state that is not part of the public and elementary school secondary education system. There is one amendment, and this is on page 43 of your voting packet. And this amendment would require each county board of education to submit a report to MSDE on the provision of student transportation services as enacted under this bill, and for the department to submit a report to EHE and the Ways and Means Committees in December 2023, and it sunsets the bill in 3 years. There was no opposition at the hearing.
Okay, first, let's have a motion to put the bill in front of us. It's been moved, it's been seconded. The amendment, what page, Ms. Goodman? 43. Is there a motion to adopt the amendment? I'll move it. Is there a second? Okay, discussion on the amendment. I think I had Senator Riley, Senator Gallion, Senator Carrozza.
You can go to the other senators. I was just going to move favorable on the bill as amended.
So, so is that the MSEA amendment?
No, I don't know what the MSEA amendment is.
Okay, because I had trouble with that amendment. I just wanted to make sure, that one was not included. I like the bill, but I don't think we should limit and not allow contractors to be running those buses. So I just wanted to make sure that MSEA amendment was not on there.
No, Senator, my amendment is to give this a few years and check it out. One thing I don't want is for them, and I don't think this is likely, and it would only be an outlier, to reduce the number of employees and go to more contractors where they're not paying benefits. I just want to have an update in a couple of years to see if it really is just increasing contractors to have a bus or a car go down the rural lane to pick up that isolated kid instead of sending a yellow school bus. I just want to make sure the intent is followed through. I'm not trying to block the bill.
Okay. Just as long as that contractor can also provide the driver, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the explanation of your amendments, because I was trying to understand them. Since the meetings, as I mentioned a couple of years ago in Wycomico County, actually were held in with the superintendent and with the school system on this. This is important for our area, so appreciate that explanation, and I'll be voting favorably.
Any objection to the amendment? It's basically reporting. And if everything is kosher and fine, we'll get rid of the sunset and we'll move on. Okay, no objection to the amendment. The bill as amended, it's been moved and seconded. A discussion, seeing no red lights, no hands going up. We will mark it as unanimous. That is Bill 448. Okay, let's go to 476.
Senate Bill 476, Health Occupations, Nurses, Delegations of Tasks. This is sponsored by Senator Eckert. This clarifies that nothing shall preclude a nurse from delegating technical tasks to nursing assistants or unlicensed individuals. The provision of nursing assistance applies so long as certain requirements are met, including supervision of the delegating nurse, and so long as the task that is delegated is only that which they are trained to perform. Provisions for unlicensed individuals apply so long as those delegated tasks do not become a routine part of the job. Under current law, as it's stated, nothing currently precludes a nurse from delegating nursing tasks to unlicensed individuals. And the term technical tasks, according to the Board of Nursing, will comply with updated regulations, and it refers to any skill that is not a nursing task, but which requires any kind of technical knowledge or skill to perform. There was no opposition, and there aren't any amendments.
It's been moved. Is it seconded? It's been seconded. Discussion on the bill as was stated, no opposition. Seeing no red lights on, seeing no hands going up. Senator, you have a question? Okay. We will record it as unanimous and send it to the floor as such. Next bill.
Senate Bill 509, National Capital Strategic Economic Development Program eligibility. This is sponsored by Senator Peters. This bill clarifies the definition of national capital region, which is already in law, for purposes of receiving funding through the National Capital Strategic Development Program. National Capital Strategic Development Program provides funding for community enhancement projects. Under current law, National Capital Region for purposes of funding from that organization is defined as an area 1, located within the I-495 Beltway, and 2, located within either an opportunity zone or an enterprise zone in Montgomery County or Prince George's County. Additionally, it has to be a sustainable community. The bill, if enacted, would define National Capital Region as a sustainable community in Montgomery County or Prince George's County, regardless of inside or outside of the Beltway. The sustainable community requirement still has to be met, but the inside-outside of the Beltway distinction is removed. However, funding priorities are given to those communities within the Beltway. In 2022 and 2023, at least 75% of funds are required to be used to further inter-Beltway projects, and in 2024, 100% of funds, priority funds, are to be used for inter-Beltway projects. There is no opposition, and there were no amendments to the bill.
Motion on the bill. Moved. Seconded. Discussion. Any objection? I'm sorry, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a provision that says this district will include the District of Columbia? I'm trying to search through. I saw that in the introduction, so it includes the District of Columbia also.
I don't think we can spend money on investment in District of Columbia. It's only those defined in the bill.
Okay, I found in the bill, the last page, it says, paragraph 2, in fiscal year 2024 and each fiscal year thereafter, 100% of the funds shall be used for community enhancement projects and sustainable communities located, at least in part, within the boundary created by Interstate 495 in the state and the District of Columbia.
Yeah, Senator, they're the boundaries. So in other words, if D.C. is here, the Beltway is there, it's got to be between the Beltway and the district.
Okay. That's
right. Only a defining characteristic.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Okay. Will anybody be voting in opposition to this Peters bill? Seeing none, that is adopted unanimously. Let's go back while everybody's here. I still think we're going to be able to finish our list today. We have, let's do the digital bill. Yeah, Senator Simon Ayer. Senator Ellis raised a question. What page, what line was that, or what page?
Same section that I Or G1, right? Isn't that the same place? Because that's where I was starting to look. You were asking about the fund?
Yeah.
Okay.
Senator Simon Ayer, Senator Ellis asked, why does it say in G on top of 24, local governments and nonprofit corporations that are working to further the goals? And his question is, why aren't you allowing for-profits?
I didn't get into the weeds on that one.
Yes.
If you'd like to try.
So I'm only guessing, but it seems to me that a for-profit business will have economic incentive to participate in this program, whereas local governments, if we don't give them some money, it would be an unfunded mandate, and nonprofit organizations wouldn't necessarily have extra funds around. So any for-profit business that wanted to engage in this would have the desire because they think it's to their benefit. So I think a lot of times we do make grants available to small businesses, but that would be a competitive process. There would have to be an RFP. It would have to go through procurement. I think these are small enough with not to exceed 500,000. I think sometimes they might be a lot smaller. Senator Simon Ayer, does that seem remotely, am I on track? Okay. Maybe council can help.
It seems like, and I can clarify this further with the folks in the House, but some of the initial reactions from Senator Elfriff's office was that a lot of times when we're thinking of for-profit organizations, we're not thinking of organizations with as limited financial capacity as maybe a nonprofit. So by incentivizing these nonprofits to go into this digital space, it creates incentives that maybe a for-profit industry or entity already has the capacity for, so they may not need those grants. And I'm also not certain how often the state even provides grants to for-profit industries, and especially bigger for-profit driven businesses. I don't think that happens too often.
We'll go back to Senator Ellis and then over to Senator Carrozza.
Okay. So instead of grants for for-profits, it would be contract. So the words flip. And so I'm wondering, Senator Hester mentioned this bill and this fund is aimed to bring in federal dollars. I'm wondering if the restrictions are at the federal level, why we need this. If that's not the case, I mean, I would hate to shut out something as a broadband education and this kind of work for small business to be shut out of that opportunity. That's why I kind of asked the questions first. Is there limitations anywhere? Because I hate to lock our small business out of any opportunities for broadband expansion.
Before I call on the Vice Chair, the Greater Baltimore Committee, which is a private business operation by and large in Baltimore region, supported the bill.
They're a nonprofit.
I'm sorry?
GBC is a nonprofit.
Yeah, but they represent.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah, the Greater Baltimore Committee, which represents a lot of the private sector in the Baltimore region, they were. I'm sorry. The Greater Baltimore Committee, that represents a lot of the for-profit community in the Baltimore region, supported the bill favorably, and I see nothing from the chamber. The other thing I'd point out, Senator, is a lot of stakeholders went into working on this, including MACO, MML, and a number of other folks, and I assume some private sector people, although I'm not sure. Sometimes when it's a delicate balance, it can throw things off. So just something to consider. Madam Vice Chair.
Just to amplify what I said before, bottom line is folks like Comcast are going to be doing the installation are going to be, as Senator Hester said, making sure that the last mile is included. So from the wires to your house, to your nonprofit, to your small business. So they will be making a lot of money through making sure that our nonprofits, our small businesses, our governments and stuff, and our residents generally are better connected through broadband. So they are definitely in this bill. That's just kind of implied they're the beneficiary. But these other small grants, we need to target to our local governments, to our municipalities and stuff, and our smaller counties that don't have extra money sitting around but really need to expand their broadband access.
Further discussion. Senator, I can't see your light. Senator Carrozza, then Senator Ellis, I'll come back to you if you want to formally make it as a motion.
Thank you, and I appreciated the council going through the amendments, and my understanding is that the amendments, the four having to do with the removing the mapping requirement, repealing the Rural Broadband Coordination Board, moving the Rural Broadband Assistance Fund to DHCD, and changing the proposed name, and extending the date of the planned delivery. That my understanding is those were amendments that were worked through with the Rural Maryland Council and the Department of Housing and Community Development. Is that correct?
So my understanding is that this was fully collaborative. I know in terms of, so specifically, I know restoring that Rural Broadband Assistance Fund was the work of Rural Maryland Council. Now, the specific amendments with DHCD, I'm not specifically sure, but I'm confident that Rural Maryland Council did sign off on.
Okay.
Because
My understanding that those are, I guess what I'm trying to confirm is that the amendments that they offered have been included in the amendments.
Yes.
And two, I was looking on page 19 of the packet, page 5 of the bill. If you go down to line 16, 3, Roman numeral 3, where it says other available state geographic and demographic data, I'm assuming that also would cover some of the rural concerns as well. That would be inclusive. So my concern all along is to make sure that there's fairness and that the work that's been done by the Rural Maryland Council on broadband is, that they're fully engaged with their amendments, as well as making sure that it's fair across the state. And am I reading that correctly, where it says other available state geographic and demographic data also covers
for rural areas?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Senator Ellis, you want to formalize and move your amendment?
Yes, sir. I would like to offer amendment to include in page 24 of the reprint, line item G, to include small, women-owned, minority business enterprises.
Okay, is there a second? It's been seconded. Further discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call.
Briefly explaining my vote, as I said, I think that this whole thing is about businesses having access and benefiting from better access to broadband. I vote no on the amendment. Thank you, Lamaria.
Just in explaining my vote, I'm worried that it could jeopardize the federal funding, which may only go to nonprofits, but I would be willing to entertain a motion to specifically call out minority nonprofits. So my vote is no.
explaining my vote. I don't know, I get the feeling that nonprofits could be key players in terms of getting to the grassroots folks in the community, having established a working relation for many, many years through my district, and I think throughout the county. So I would vote no.
Amendment's defeated 4-7. The bill's amended. Any other amendments? Senator Simon Ayer.
I would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Anybody else? All right. Carozza, Riley, Simon Ayer, Kagan, Lamb, Ellis, Patterson. Does anybody not want to be added? Add everyone on the committee. Okay, the bill is amended. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder, before we vote final passage, Senator Hester, you have a bill on broadband. Is there any, can you just, what's the status of that? Messages are popping up all over the place. Are those collaborating? Are they complementary? Should we be talking about these together? Is there any aspect of your bill that should be amended into this? Or can you just speak to that real briefly before we vote on final passage?
Real briefly. I want to be very careful of deciding whose bill has preference.
Oh, totally.
You know.
I just want to understand, because I know she has a broadband bill, so I just want to, if you could explain the difference and the status, briefly.
The bill that I'm working on deals specifically with the dig once laws. The dig once. So if you're digging up alongside of a road, either a state or a county road, and you're going to lay something down, you also lay the high broadband fiber. The overlap is that there is a fund in my bill, so we can amend our bill to match this bill.
Very helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, on the bill as amended, we added a few amendments from the vice chair. There may have been others. Will anybody be voting against the broadband bill? If not, we will record it 11-0. Then let's, excuse me, let's go to the other Elfreth bill, 283. Senator, we debated and then held the bill in terms of election fairness. You would raise that issue. Committee counsel informed us that it is a staff member. It is not a student. And Senator Washington raised the point. You can repeat that as a nonprofit public institution, for any of their staff to actively promote to the students one party over another is basically unacceptable. She thinks it might actually be a firing offense. And for us to have to ask that staff person from the Department of Student Affairs, if they're a Democrat or Republican, might not be that appropriate. So we debated some, but we wanted to wait for you because you raised a point on Wednesday.
I did talk to the sponsor, and she brought that point up, said they can't ask party affiliation, and we had to conclude our conversation. So she was sympathetic to what we're saying, but I don't know what the solution is. And as far as, whether they could get in trouble or not, I mean, my concern is elections are political, and it could be simply providing more information more actively to one group than the other if you only have one person doing that. In our election systems that we have in the state or even in the county levels, we're very careful to divide them so it's not all one party in the election board or canvassing or watching. So I'm just a little concerned that we're setting this up as a state law where we're only going to put one person whatever party it could potentially affect. And I just think that's a concern I have with the bill.
Okay, the other point that I think we clarified was if, for example, the local board of elections decided to choose a campus for a location for early voting, for example, they've got to sign off on most of the policies. And actually, at the moment, that's controlled across the state by your party. The internal, it specifies using the website of dates, availability of voting, and that can pretty easily be monitored because it's all going to be public. So I think, personally, if there was any effort to use this in a partisan fashion, I think it would be stopped pretty quickly. But that's just my view.
Inquiries on this. It was stated that MICUA, if that's how you say it, I guess the private institution, they're already doing this. So I guess, and they saw tremendous extra participation. And we're not mandating they do this. I'm just wondering why we have to put a law in to do something that we already have a model that works. I don't know if she's reached out to the higher education and they said we're not willing to do this. I didn't see any opposition in here, so I'm just wondering why we actually need a law for it.
It's a fair question, one we could probably replicate on many bills that come before us. Further discussion on the bill as amended. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator. The good senator had an amendment that strikes a large part of the bill. What pages would it strike, Senator?
Well, it would be different things, including part of the title. So just to speak to
you don't have to get into the technical, the
right.
title or purpose paragraph.
Pretty much, it would strip out all the student portion, would leave the military in. So I've done some research on this, and my findings showed that the student portion of the bill is unnecessary. So this amendment would strike the student portion from the bill, including the title. There are already register to vote links already included on class signups. It's easy for our young college students to Google how to register to vote, and it's partially the candidate's responsibility to connect with their community and get out the vote. There are already various get out the vote groups, political clubs on these campuses, and I wanted to speak about an organization like Campus Vote Project. They have already been working to normalize and institutionalize student voting by working directly with colleges and universities across the country. To earn the voter-friendly campus designation, campuses must submit a plan and report the results after implementing the plan for the general election. Many campuses develop creative ways to engage students. Here's a list of campuses that earned the voter-friendly campus designation for 2019-2020. They include Frostburg State University, Morgan State University, Towson University, University of Baltimore, and the University of Maryland. Also, from the University of Maryland paper, title, University of Maryland Voters Confident and High Turnout Among College Voters. Quote, a recent poll published by the Knight Foundation in August, research agency College Pulse surveyed 4,000 full-time college students to gauge their interest in voting. 71% said they were absolutely certain they would vote in the upcoming election. Also, end quote. Also wanted to point out in the past election, even the Xfinity Center was an early voting center. $15,000 to $100,000 annually per institution will be the cost of this. And my question that would be addressed is this going to be passed on to our college students in the form of tuition increases? So that's why I would offer that amendment to strike that.
Is there a second for the amendment? I'm going to accept it as a conceptual amendment. Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, let's get a roll call. Right. On the amendment, on the Gallion amendment, making the bill solely for military complexes. Is that fair? Is that a fair characterization? Yeah, well, yes, okay. Roll call. The amendment goes down 4 in favor, 7 against. We have the bill as amended. There were previous amendments, discussion on the bill as amended. Let's do a roll call.
I would actually like to explain my vote on this. I voted no on a similar bill last year and took a lot of social media grief for it with all sorts of accusations and all that. I really want to commend the sponsors in the House and Senate for bringing back a much more moderate, thoughtful, and effective bill this year that I am glad to be voting for. Please count me as an aye. Thank you.
The bill as amended passes 9-2. That'll be taken to the floor along with the other bills. We're going to go to 324. That's been hanging around a while. Let's see if we can dispose of it one way or the other. Oh. Ms. Morton, it's her bill, and she was called to B&T to present another bill that they're second on, so we will come back to that one. So we will go to the next bill, whatever, 564, I believe. Senator Griffith.
No.
Oh, that's procurement?
Yeah.
So I don't have procurement. So April has SB 564, 697, and 703. I have 596 and 10.
Let's go to 596 if we can.
Okay. Senate Bill 596, Election Law, Early Voting Centers, Hours of Operation, from Senator Washington. This bill increases the hours during which early voting centers are open for a gubernatorial primary or general election and a presidential primary election, so that early voting centers are open during those elections from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. instead of from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. This makes early voting centers for those elections equivalent to the current early voting centers hours for presidential general elections. There is one amendment from Senator Kagan. It's on page 47 of your voting packet, and this requires that early voting centers open at 7 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. There's no opposition.
Okay, first let's move the bill, if we can. It's been moved and seconded. Then let's deal with it, put the amendment on the floor in front of us. It's been moved by Senator Kagan and seconded by someone for discussion purposes. Senator Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very simple amendment. We currently vote 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Let's make it all consistent, and Senator Washington is amenable to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only question, I understand wanting to line the hours up, but this early voting is a longer stretch. And in the last election, we heard concerns under the circumstances. There was questions about having people to work the precincts, and this would mean they would have to get in 3 hours earlier on these days. I don't know. Jared could probably tell us how how much there is to setting up and getting things booted up and ready to go. I just worry that this could discourage maybe some folks from helping out. I mean, 8 o'clock probably be okay, but when you go all the way up to 7, I mean, they're going to have to get there at 5 a.m. every morning to set things up, 5:30. I just worry about the folks that are actually manning these places.
Or staffing them as the world goes.
Oh, I love my chairman.
Senator Washington.
Thank you, Senator Gallion, for that question. I actually think both for voters and for workers, having it just be consistent for just all elections is, again, less complicated. Additionally, the data suggests that we do lose voters because people forget it or they're confused, and so they show up at 7 a.m. or they show up at 8 a.m. and they don't know the difference between the early voting site and the early voting site. And so staffing should be calibrated. In other words, those individuals that are in the middle of the day when it's really slow really will be moved to the earlier portions of the day. And I just will note that there's no opposition on this, and I just think it's in the best interest of both the workers as well as our constituents who wish to cast their vote before going to work.
Let's hold it. I'll come back to you. Senator Carrozza, followed by Senator Gallion.
I just wanted to follow up in that when the bill sponsor mentioned no opposition, I actually have heard from my local election board members of their concerns and opposition to the 8 a.m. and now moving it up to 7 a.m., especially the points that Senator Gallion made. So I did want to note that I have heard from the direct opposition.
Senator Gallion?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I don't think, I think it got a little misunderstood what I was asking. So I was probably fine with 8 o'clock, but now we're going to another hour. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but for the folks that are staffing the place, it may be. So my question to the bill sponsor, when you originally put this in, you had 8. So why did you go with 8 originally instead of 7?
We were just trying to give an extra 2 hours, thinking about when people go to work, but then hearing the amendment sponsors talking about that there are indeed individuals who travel farther for work, who get out earlier. Again, it was sort of much more centered to just, my community and my district, and not really thinking of the state of the whole. So that's why I was willing to open it up to 7 o'clock, recognizing that some people travel a lot farther to get to work.
Okay, thanks.
Senator Washington just said it. I was just going to make the point. In my Gaithersburg and Rockville district, people, when they are able to commute to their jobs again and go into an office, they do start their days earlier. It's not my preference, but other people do it. And it's already the custom on election days. Let's just make everything consistent. So I appreciate Senator Washington's collaboration on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, in my district, I represent Charles County, folks have to leave at 5 o'clock to go to work, to get to work on a good day. So, I won't offer an amendment for 5 o'clock, but yeah, but I fully support the 7 o'clock.
Okay, on the 7 o'clock amendment, roll call. Amendment passes 6-5. Okay, the bill as amended. Discussion on the bill as amended. While some aren't happy with it, does that turn any yes votes to no? Or do we need a roll call, or are people going to vote for it? Okay. If seeing no objection, the bill is amended. No opposition. The bill passes 596. Okay, we're going to SB 10. The other bills are under Committee Counsel Morton, who is upstairs. We'll go to SB 10.
SB 10, Election Law, Polling Sites, Firearms Prohibitions. This bill prohibits a person from carrying or displaying a firearm on the presence of a privately or publicly owned building being used as a polling site during an election, including a parking lot. Or 2, carrying or possessing a firearm within 100 feet of a polling site during an election. This prohibition does not apply to an individual carrying or displaying a firearm within 100 feet of a polling site if required by law or by regulation adopted by the State Board of Elections in connection with ballot security activities. A person who violates this bill's prohibition without knowing that the act is illegal must pay a civil penalty and have the matter adjudicated under the provisions of law that allow for a penalty of up to $5,000. There is one amendment from Senator Pinsky, and that's on page 3 of your packet. And this amendment provides that it is not a violation for an individual whose residence is within 100 feet of the polling place to transfer their legally possessed firearm between their residence and their vehicle within 100 feet of a polling place.
First of all, on the bill, would someone like to move the bill? Senator Lamb has moved. Vice Chair Kagan second. There's an amendment to take care of people who live nearby who don't get caught in this as a consequence of where they live. Anybody want to move that amendment? I will. Anybody want to second it? It's been seconded. Discussion on the amendment. Just in looking carefully at it, some people raised a question, I live nearby, I have a gun, am I breaking the law? So they obviously can't take it into the voting booth with them or the voting facility. Any objection to adopting the amendment? The amendment's adopted. The bill as amended is before you. Is there a discussion? Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The penalty is not part of the bill. It's already in statute. Is that correct? Okay. We're not changing any of that. Thank you very much.
Further discussion? Senator Simon Aaron.
Yeah, I remember when we brought this up, if you can help remind me, they have drop-off boxes which may or may not continue. Some were concerned that this would apply to them if it was within the I think they said the parking lot, and anybody could drop that off at 2 in the morning or whatever, and this would prohibit anyone from who is legally allowed to carry a gun. They would not be able to carry a gun in this area now?
It says in the polling place, so a drop box is not considered a polling site. And so, I mean, that's really the distinction in the law, is if the drop box is within 100 feet of the polling site, then yes, that would be a violation. But if it's not within 100 feet, so what I think the goal here was that you can't have the gun in the car within 100 feet of the polling site. But if it's not within that range, then it is legally possessed, then it is not a violation of the section.
Okay. So, and I know some of the polling places in my area, the drop box was within 100 feet. And it specifically says on line 26 on page 2, including a parking lot.
Right.
So if the drop box was within the 100 feet, that person would not be allowed to carry their gun to
It
drop
says
that off.
carry or display. It doesn't say possess. It says carry or display. So if you had it in your hand when you're at the drop box within 100 feet, then yes, you would be in violation if your residence wasn't within 100 feet of the polling place. However, if it's in a lockbox in your trunk and you pull up, then you are possessing, you're not carrying, and you would not be in violation of that section.
Okay. And I don't know if Senator Pinsky, if yours addressed that as far as what I understood the intent of this bill was that we wouldn't be taking it into an election place, opposed to somebody dropping it off late at night when it's dark, nobody's there, which are two different scenarios. I don't think maybe it is, but I don't know if that was trying to capture that scenario.
No, it was trying to capture someone actually carrying it within 100 feet because that's where they live, and they were moving it from their home to a car to their home. I think what Ms. Goodman said is if it's in the car, you're not carrying it or displaying it. It also says there's an or in that section on page 2, or within 100 feet. So, I mean, you could park, 30 yards away in the lot if you wanted to display it in your car. I assume that means a shotgun in the back of your car or truck. So. Senator Gallion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And another thing, as I reread the amendment, I don't think it would be covered. So in a lot of these places we have volunteer fire companies and places like that are polling places, and you could have a member of that department sitting in the station with a legal, they're legally allowed to have this. And because there's a polling precinct there, I don't see how they would lose that right, my understanding. I mean, because the number 2 on the amendment says, it's talking about a residence of the individual. It doesn't say, like a member or whatever at an organization that also houses. But I did bring that up in the hearing, but I never heard anything. So.
And if you look at line 22, it says, except as provided in section 16903 of this subtitle. If you look now up into lines 9 through 14, it says a law enforcement officer, security guard who's on duty or traveling to or from duty may vote while wearing a uniform. And they're also allowed to carry their firearm while they're on duty. Or, so for example, if it was near a law enforcement or they were legally allowed while on duty to have a firearm in their fire station, then they in fact would be not in violation of this section. There's an exception for law enforcement personnel. The way the law was previously constructed was very confusing. It talked about being in a disguise of a law enforcement person, and so you were already prohibited from bringing a firearm into a polling place, but it was kind of disguised in that weird language. So this is just making it pretty clear, but there is an exception in the law for law enforcement officers while on duty that are legally carrying a firearm.
So going back to my question, so if they're not a law enforcement officer, if they're a member of a volunteer fire company and are hanging out at the fire station and are legally allowed to have it, now they wouldn't be able to, correct?
Correct.
No,
If the site was a polling place, they would not be allowed to have it in the time while it was being used as a polling site.
But they can't carry or display it. So in other words, I don't think firefighters are wearing a holster and a gun while they're on duty. I mean, they might have it in their car, but as long as it's in their car, it can still remain in their car. So I haven't seen, I've got a few volunteer and paid firefighters. I don't see them carrying guns in the unit.
Well, I'm not sure if they carry them or not either, but
I don't know if they're even allowed to.
But I just don't. I'm just always leery when a potential right's being taken away. That's why,
Understood. Senator Cruz, I sometimes can't see you're late. Okay. Senator Ellis.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Ms. Goodman, under this bill, a volunteer firefighter who's a police officer, and he's at that polling location that's a firehouse, not on duty, but he's there as a volunteer firefighter. Would he or she be allowed to have their firearm?
And the site is being used as a polling place. They cannot carry or display their weapon. So they would have to not have it on them during the time that that site was used for this purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Vice Chair.
Chairman. Ms. Goodman, Senator Simonetti is not going to be happy that he flagged for me an issue that I think needs amending. I am right now on the list of the statewide the ballot drop-off locations, not all of them are polling locations. Anne Arundel County Board of Elections, Southeast Anchor Library in Baltimore, Hamilton Elementary School, Carroll County Board of Elections, Cecil Perryville Middle School, blah, blah, blah. I know Rockville City Hall is a ballot drop-off location. It is not a voting location. Prince George's County Board of Elections, Kent Island Fire Department. I mean, I'm just sampling here. There are a bunch. I'm having an image of someone who is standing next to a drop-off box location, brandishing a gun, wearing insignia or a T-shirt or a cap or buttons for the candidates of their choice, brandishing a weapon as voters are thinking about coming over to drop off their ballot. That seems terrifying, and I think that's not what this bill would have them allow. So I'd like to suggest an amendment, Mr. Chairman, in the section, it says lines 24 through 26 has carry or display of firearm on the premises of a privately or publicly owned building being used as a polling site during an election, including in a parking lot. I don't know, Ms. Goodman, whether we can just, whether it would be another section or whether you can incorporate the same, it doesn't matter, whether that can be incorporated, that it covers drop-off box locations that are not polling places, but that are being used for election activities.
You could try, but I mean, there's quite a few thousand of those sites available, and some of them are maybe on street corners and things like that.
They
So
aren't, actually.
the wordsmithing of that would take a bit. I'm going to say I'd have to really
Okay.
sit down and look at how those boxes are cited, exactly how you want to word language, depending on whether it's near a building, in a parking lot. I'm
So-
happy to obviously do whatever you want there.
Sure.
Just letting you know that the language of that is going to be tricky.
Okay. It's only 3 pages of ballot drop-off locations from last year, from 2020. And again, they are marked with asterisks. In Baltimore County, there are 5 locations, and only one is a drop-off box only and not a polling place. Baltimore City, 15 locations. 1, 2. There are more that are drop-off boxes and not polling places. Anne Arundel, there's just 1 of the 5. Montgomery County, yeah, so just to give you an idea. But I think that's a huge loophole that's not covered by this.
Vice Chair, I really appreciate that suggestion. Having sat through, a full year of debates on this in JPR, these things are always more complicated than they seem. And I wonder if we could, simply move ahead as the Vice Chair of JPR drafted, and maybe consider a second bill to do what you're saying.
Yes, well, we can do that, and you just have to vote against the amendment if it's formally proffered. And of course, that could be a second bill.
Or I could toss it into my kitchen sink bill, which has a million other issues in it.
That's fine.
Ms. Goodman indicated that this was going to be complicated to draft such an amendment, which means that I couldn't offer it right now.
But Senator, if we do that, to be honest, I would take a straw poll.
I understand.
And if it goes down,
I understand.
we can save energy.
I understand. And if it goes down in committee, then it can't be offered on the floor.
Well, there are 12 other vehicles, I think,
Yeah.
including your own, if you want to use it.
Okay. I would like to say that I am dissatisfied with a loophole this large, but I will defer to the wisdom of the chairman and of Senator Kenny Frey Hester, but I think that needs to be addressed.
Okay, so you do want to offer it?
Nope, I am going to defer to you and
Okay.
to Senator Hester and
Okay.
do it without, but I want to fix it.
Okay. The bill, Senator,
Yes, now that we're not talking about amendments, I wanted to talk to the bill as a whole just one more time before we vote. Something that we haven't really talked much about, two points. Drop boxes are, pretty much all of them are monitored, I believe, or most of them. And another point I wanted to bring forth was, I believe it's already in law that on school grounds where a ton of these polling places would be, you already can't have a firearm there anyway. Is that correct?
On school property.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring, so for the committees, to kind of highlight that, it's already in a huge amount of these precincts.
Discussion, seeing none, let's go to roll call on the bill as amended on restricting firearms near polling places.
For the bill as
Amended.
with vice chairs?
No, with the amendment for people who live nearby.
Okay, thank
So
you.
they don't get caught up in this.
Yes.
Yes.
Senator Gallion?
No.
Senator Caruso? Senator Washington? Yes. Senator Riley?
Yes.
Senator Patterson?
Yes.
Senator Simonier?
No.
And Senator Penske?
Yes.
8-3.
Okay, the bill passes 8-3. It is 18 of, we got through every,
Can I do 2 seconds? Can I interrupt?
not yet. We did, I'm not adjourning quite yet.
I'm not.
Okay,
Sorry, it's going to take a second.
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, for colleagues who apparently the system is down on our COVID test results, and so most of us, I think, have not yet gotten texts. So I wanted to give you enough heads-up notice that you might want to ask your staff to print out the test results so you can bring it so you can have access to the floor. So it just needed an extra couple minutes for your staff to do that.
Senator, why don't you text Jake or Casey? Okay, great, thank you. Yes, a lot of times it'll show up on the website, but not on your text.
We're having problems with texting today.
Yeah. I've got 2 other announcements. Senator Fry Hester.
Sorry.
Okay, we did good work. We have 4 bills. We're going to hold them till Wednesday. I don't know if there's a second session or not today, but hopefully it'll be an early Friday, so we won't be meeting this afternoon. Let me mention two things, however. Next week, we're going to start taking up election bills. We've had plenty of them, and I'm trying to group them together. So we're also going to do with other bills, so hopefully, Senator Caruso will get to your bill, I promise. The compact bills, we still have about 80 bills that we've heard but haven't voted on yet. We're trying to get through them and balancing your time and the ability to move bills and which ones we have to hurry on, which we don't. There are a number of election bills, and that will start to take our focus next week. Not totally Wednesday and Friday, but we will be taking them, so you might want to start to review them. Some subcommittees are working. Education Subcommittee had a meeting yesterday. Environment Subcommittee met yesterday. Sorry, too many things going on in a small brain. Senator Fry Hester's Cyber is meeting twice next week, and hopefully by the end of Thursday we'll have recommendations on a number of bills. We haven't scheduled the Education Committee, but I'll let people know maybe even before the end of the day for a time on that. Let me stop there. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know what happened on yesterday. I tried for at least 45 minutes to find out where the Environmental Committee was meeting. My staff, we called down here, and they were told they were sending us the linkage. We waited around. My staff came down here. I don't know where that meeting was held yesterday. I tried everything I possibly could to find out about that particular meeting.
It was virtual. And actually,
well, that's what I thought. That's why we needed a linkage. And my staff called down and said, okay, hold on. We're going to send the linkage, of which we never got.
Look, I don't know where the breakdown was, Senator. Nothing was voted on. It was preliminary conversation, and either Senator Lamb, the subcommittee chairman, or Committee, Council Morton. You should check with them to see what we did there. They're going to review what was said and may schedule a second meeting, and I apologize for them. I don't know what the
Okay.
breakdown was.
Was this for yesterday?
Yes, the one that,
It was created, the link was created the link was created from the subcommittee, so you should have received it. Everyone that's on that subcommittee should have received it.
But I'm not on that committee.
the center was a sponsor, but not on the committee, and of course, he's invited. Anybody's invited, number one. Number two, particularly because he was a sponsor of the bill. Senator Lamb, do you have your light on? Okay, all I can say is there was a breakdown, and we apologize. We're trying to do the best we can. Okay. With that, we won't be meeting until hearings on Tuesday, unless the subcommittee, I think one subcommittee is meeting on Monday, the cyber. Thank you. Have a great weekend, and thanks for all your work.